This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest! Straight up light you on fire for a coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
What's everybody? Oh man, false start again. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Motor City Sports Rant. I am Jason Jarvie. Follow me on Twitter at Jarvie the King. Sitting with me and here to commiserate another poor Detroit sports weekend is John the Doc Macaroon. Doc, what's up?
These early morning recordings, hon, don't suit you very well. You're more alive and lively in the evening hours. I get it. It's okay. I'm going to actually leave that one in there. I'm not going to edit that out.
Don't take it out. I'm just as flawed as my football team that I love. We have false starts, and you know what? You just have to pick up and move forward with it.
So did Dave Warner get waived?
I don't think so.
Oh, he's still the offensive coordinator at Michigan State? Even after that performance, what everybody's been talking about as the weakness, we'll talk about the Michigan State Spartans and their disastrous performance versus BYU. And you know what sucks, when your team loses is
everything.
when your opponent comes out after the field and is just like shit talking you afterwards. It's like, come on, dude. That was not the thing I needed to hear after Michigan State lost, was that BYU knew everything that was coming. That was a dagger, and that sucked. But I'd love to start the podcast talking about the Lions, because that was exciting.
Isn't that against their religion, the Mormons?
I just wanted to give them a bunch of Pepsi.
Give them some caffeine, have a spooky Mormon hell dream.
It is a big loss still when Michigan State loses at home. And it put a damper a little bit on the weekend, but when they say it's a transition year, it's the truth. And Michigan State, they got a long way to go if they're going to salvage anything this year. And, we'll have to talk about it. Maybe this version, the 2016 version, might not even be bowl eligible.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's just a whole nother realm of depressing. But let's talk about another depressing subject. The Detroit Lions go out. They're underdogs against the Philadelphia Eagles, the 3-0 Philadelphia Eagles. They're coming off of a bye week. They know everything that's coming their way. And you see right away, the Lions just fool everybody. They go 21-0, or they go up. They score all three possessions in the first half, go 21-10 in the first half, and then they forget how to play offense in the second half. But they still pull out the victory, and I am pissed.
Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're one of the fans that after the game was a little bit upset that you want this team to lose so that Caldwell will be removed. Come on now.
It doesn't make sense. The season is... There's no reason why we should have... The way that we've played, there's no reason you should have beaten Philadelphia. I know, you can boo me all you want. It's dumb. It's so Lions to lose to a shit team like Chicago and then follow that up by beating one of the best teams in the league right now.
Jason, what happened to this guy?
Go Lions! Yeah!
After 1 month, you're already off the bandwagon. You're ready to shift already. Come on now. That was a nice victory.
Nice victory?
A
Not
victory.
playing any offense in the second half and having to rely on a Matt Prater field goal to win?
Would you rather...
90 seconds. That's all that changed the game.
It sounds like you would rather lose pretty than win ugly. Listen, Jason, most games in the NFL are decided within 7 points. And that's why on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, a lot of people were asking and, really kind of wondering, should I take the Lions and the 4 points? And I said, to a lot of people that wanted to gamble and bet on the game, that I felt like the Lions were going to lose, but close. So if I was a betting man, I would have took the Lions and the points. At home, You have a rookie quarterback. I had the vibe that the Lions were going to play well and maybe just fade at the end with a couple key mistakes. Usually in Lions history, Carson Wentz makes that pass and Darius Slay doesn't make those 2 key plays. But in the end, you could argue that the Lions deserve to lose, that there's still several areas of weakness on this team. But hey, they won the game, and that was a great performance to come back. Even after that awful second half offensively, you still had to have a drive when Philadelphia took the lead. And Golden Tate, even if it's just a couple plays, made the plays at the end with Matthew Stafford. You got to be a little bit excited. But I definitely understand your point of view, because in the end, globally, when you look big picture-wise, of course, Jim Caldwell probably is not going to be the head coach of this team, but we had this team going 7-9, 8-8. Where are you going to get the wins from?
Victory somehow,
you got to win some games.
If this victory somehow saves his job, then everything is for naught. The guy, we need to lose. He needs to be gone. He should have been gone 2 weeks ago. We need to see what we have with the rest of this coaching staff. We can't even lose right. We should have lost that game, John.
So you're saying you wanted Jim Caldwell to be gone faster than at the end of the year?
I do, because if he makes it all the way through the season, and let's just say that he finishes on a high note like he did last year, we go 8-8, we miss the playoffs. What's to say that the Lions don't keep Jim Caldwell around for another year? We just saw that happen with the Detroit Tigers. Brad Ausmus clearly isn't the guy to carry this team to a World Series championship. But because, we had this second half turnaround, even though we were completely out of it, Brad Ausmus, we'll give you another year. So we have another year of poor managing. The Lions are my favorite team, and I don't want to see Jim Caldwell coach another year, because it's another year wasted. You're wasting another year of Matthew Stafford. You're wasting, at this point, DeAndre Levy, the dude probably isn't ever going to play again. I'm just going to call that. That guy doesn't want to play. And it's just another year wasted for fans.
See, I can understand completely where you're coming from, because that's what I want too. But let's look at it versus Philadelphia.
But you just want those meaningless
You
wins.
were not excited when...
You want to go, yeah, go Lions.
No, you weren't
You wanna
excited
do that
when
on Sunday.
Darius Slay knocked the football out of Ryan Matthews' hand, got the ball back, and you seen, Jim Caldwell and his 2-inch vertical give the first down signal a little bit of life. You can tell, dude, you have to have a little bit of humanity. He knows. And listen, he slightly changed a little bit over the week in terms of his talk with the media. Not fully disclosing a lot more, but he took more questions. He kind of opened one of the press conferences by saying, listen, I understand you guys want all this information, but we are trying to limit the information that's coming out, because if we disclose a bunch of injuries, that's going to help our opponents. And so, yeah, Jim Caldwell doesn't have a great track record of victories to act like Bill Belichick, but that's what they're doing. They're not going to come out there and just give you everything that you want.
I get if it's Matthew Stafford and he has a bad throwing shoulder that you wouldn't want to disclose something like that. Or if one of our wide receivers has a knee problem that, you don't want them to cut you don't want another team to know to take out their knees. DeAndre Levy, he's played 2 games in the past 2 seasons.
And the part that was challenging is, how do you injure your knee when you're not practicing? That's a tough thing
The
to
guy
look at.
hasn't missed an opportunity to write in the Detroit Free Press, and he had an article in the Free Press. Did you read it?
I read every one of them.
And this last one, basically the way that I read it is that he's saying that we're bad people because we care about his injury status, and that there's no doubt there's way worse stuff in the world happening, but we can separate these two. They're 2 separate things.
Yeah, on Sunday, that's not what I want to read. So I tweeted the Free Press and said, put that article on a Wednesday. Please, on Sunday, it's all about football. And exactly right. And then, see, here's the thing that is hard for maybe some athletes when they're trying to talk like this philosophically. Of course, real life issues like abuse and inequality is more important on the scale than professional athletics. But you're an individual that just signed a massive contract. So now you're invested in this team, and we're invested in you. And so we're thinking, okay, we're not worried too much about what DeAndre Levy thinks about anything socially. I don't care what he thinks politically. I want to know about DeAndre Levy, not about the person. As a person, I'm sure he's a great, upstanding citizen. That's why he's on this team. I want to know, what is your dedication to playing football and to winning a title? Because all I look at is there's other athletes out there that are talking in the media a la Tom Brady, where he goes, I want to play forever, where I am tortured by the fact that I'm not playing, where I'm in there at 5, 6 a.m. looking at film day in and day out. And he had a great piece on NFL Network. And he said, listen, I go out there, and when I make a mistake, I'm not out there trying to prove it to the coaches. I'm not out there trying to prove it to my teammates. I'm out there trying to prove it to myself, because I was, a backup at Michigan. I was drafted way late in the NFL draft. I'm trying to prove it to myself. What is DeAndre Levy trying to prove? I think that it takes a little bit more, and I don't blame him so much. I blame the organization. When you lose that much, and you witness it week in, week out, it's hard to pump yourself up when there's no victory. You know what I mean? I can understand that because we talk about it here in the podcast. If we did a podcast and absolutely nobody listened to it, it would be hard to fire up the microphones week in and week out. But we know we have an audience. We know that there's some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the success of our network. But when you go play for the Lions, what is the light at the end of the tunnel other than collecting a check? So I don't blame him for that, but what's going on and what these athletes need to know about is you can't poo-poo what the fans think. And when the perception is, if I get wind that the perception is that I'm soft and that I don't want to play, I'm out there going, no, this is what's going on. I'm not going to give the details, the fine new details of my injuries, but I'm going to be like, listen, I'm going to try my absolute best, fans. I want to be on this field. It's killing me not to play for this team, and it's killing me not to be part of this organization, but I'm trying my best. I will honor this contract, because most people are thinking this dude's going to maybe retire at the end of this year, or whenever his contract's up, he's going to be gone. He's got one foot out the door already. And when you have one foot out the door, it's basically like you're done. And so that's why DeAndre Levy has to have some insight into what people are thinking about him. He has to at least address it, not by deflecting it and talking about other things. We all know that social issues are important, but we're football fans, and that's what we want to know about. When a guy signs a massive deal, you got to live up to that deal, and you got to be a contributor for this team. We need you.
It doesn't make it makes no sense.
It doesn't make, well, he's lionized. This is the definition and a byproduct of a losing organization. You got a
losing organization that just went out and beat one of the best teams in the league. So there's such a mixed perspective. So there's going to be no change.
Jason, you didn't give the Lions any chance of beating Philly with a rookie quarterback on the road. You had to give them at least a chance.
Did you see what they did to Pittsburgh? They blanked Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh they clearly have a better offense than what we have. They should have shut us out. Our running backs are Theo Riddick and Zach Zenner. We have a Golden Tate who's not doing anything. He's cursed by you. Mm-hmm. We have Marvin Jones, who's banged up. We know Eric Ebron. We have, I love the guy, Anquan Bolden, but he is older. And then nobody else.
You know what's allowed me to have all this football wisdom today? During the football game, I was at a baptism, and I have, as everyone knows, I have 5 phones. But one of them has Verizon, and when you have Verizon, you can watch all the games on demand. So I got a chance to drink a lot of wine and watch the game, and it made it much more enjoyable. Let me tell you, alcohol, I used to say, well, why do people drink so much? It eases the nerves a little bit, and it allowed me to kind of have some perspective about what was going on in that game. You got to remember, Jason, there is talent on this field. Matthew Stafford, a couple more individuals on defense have stepped up, but what you got to say is what was so concerning about the loss to Chicago was they didn't show up at all. If this Lion team performs up to 85 to 90% of their capabilities, like Darius Slay making plays, Golden Tate making plays, Marvin Jones, Theo Riddick, Matthew Stafford, if they make plays, this is a 7-9 win football team. But the problem that pissed everybody off versus Chicago was they didn't show up, and they looked like there was some mental issues going on, like they had quit on their coach. But after a week of getting brutalized, they've done this before. They came out, and in the first half, they moved the football, which they can do, and they were able to come back and win the game after some mistakes. But what you got to look for with this Lions team is continuing to execute the plan, being motivated, and bringing the effort game in and game out. Now, you could ask, can this team live up to the expectations after halftime and do some things, because another game has passed where we see another team adjust to what the Lions are doing, and the Lions do jack shit. And that can't happen, because you got a Rams team that's probably going to be poised to, come back for a victory after what the hell they tried to do in their last performance. But the Lions, Jason, if they perform, that's the secret remedy. And I can see why you're mad about Caldwell, because I think with a rah-rah coach, with somebody else that was a new voice, could probably draw more from this team. Right. I agree. That Chicago loss is an eye-opener, because it looked like they didn't play and it looked like there was no terrible game plan. But I implore you, take it one game at a time. Just look at the storylines one game at a time. You see the trends, and look at it one game at a time. If the Lions can perform versus the Rams and the Redskins, you're looking at 4-3 with some renewed hope.
So we're essentially at the same position as the Detroit Tigers, that if we win, it's despite our coach.
Jason, I know
that's what it is.
No,
Jim Caldwell's not a good coach.
No, he's not a good coach.
Win,
right? Exactly.
If somehow we were to make it to the playoffs this season, which I'm not saying that, and I know you're probably going to load that in a drop, but if somehow they were to make it to the playoffs or get close, it would be despite Jim Caldwell. It would be because everybody started playing out of their minds. Matthew Stafford had a perfect rest of the season. Golden Tate started playing like he was the Golden Tate in the year that Calvin Johnson got hurt. The Marvin Jones kept going off. Theo Riddick became a viable every down running back. Our defense, everybody started playing there. Ziggy Ansah comes back, actually starts playing. Our linebackers are actually able to cover a tight end. Our defensive backs are able to not shoot themselves in the foot. It would be despite Jim Caldwell. And then at the end of the season, you would just hire him again. He would get another contract. Jim Caldwell would be back again, and we would be in the same situation next year. I don't want that.
You don't give him any credit for not really completely losing the locker room after that performance versus the Bears. Obviously, the morale was down. They were getting hammered all week. But by all accounts, they had a decent week of practice. You don't give him no credit for being able to rebound from a shitty performance and coming back and getting a victory versus an undefeated team. No credit at all.
I give him no credit at all. That was all the players. Jim Caldwell isn't out there scoring 3 touchdowns.
Well, I mean, what do we complain about with the Lions? They're not aggressive. They were able to come out and on a couple fourth downs, they went for it, and they were able to execute. Offensively in that first half, they seemed like they were back on track. And with Golden Tate, Theo Riddick, Marvin Jones.
It's a desperate move by a coach to try and keep his job.
You think
nothing's going to change?
Okay.
It's the fourth down, going for it on fourth down, it's too little too late. Why didn't he go for it on fourth down in the playoffs when we played the Cowboys?
Exactly.
Damn it, John, you're making me angry.
Well, I just have to look at the other side of things too, because you could hammer the Lions all day about the weaknesses, but look what he did. Laken Tomlinson was underperforming. He takes him out, brings in Glasgow. The offense is a little bit better.
Too little, too late.
You already think the season's lost after 5 games?
I'm saying that the whole season is going to be a loss, regardless if we win, regardless if we lose. If we win, we keep Caldwell. If we lose, then at least we're getting rid of Caldwell, more than likely. And then we can focus. Then Bob Quinn can actually start rebuilding the team the way that he sees fit. Because as it is, this really is still, it's a Martin Mayhew created team. We still have Jim Caldwell, we still have Jim Bob Cooter, Terrell Austin. This isn't Bob Quinn's team. This is still Martin Mayhew. We still have that shadow. And I get it that we still have the players that he's drafted, but the players aren't something that you can replace as easily as a coach. And the coach, that should be the people who it starts with them, and then it trickles down through the players.
And see, here's another part. Sometimes there is such thing as addition by subtraction. When Eric Ebron went down, I at first was like, oh no, this is going to affect the offense. And then I said to myself, it's Eric Ebron. His absence actually improves this team. And you may look at me and listen and be like, what? But I say to you that the Lions offense is better without Eric Ebron. And the reason why you saw a better offensive performance was the penalties went down a little bit. You saw a better execution. You saw a game plan. And I would argue to you that, yeah, Jim Caldwell is very important, but what's more important right now at this point in the season is how these coordinators put these players in position. The defense has excuses because a lot of impact players are not there, but Terrell Austin has to find a way to dial up pressure and improve the defensive line play. That's on him. Jim Bob Cooter's job is to prepare this offense week in and week out. And sometimes, Jason, you have to admit that sometimes maybe the coaches come together, they formulate a game plan, and they think it's the right one versus certain matchups, but it ends up not being the right one. And so this week versus the Eagles in the first half, that game plan that they came up with was fine. And that was what was needed for them to execute. What's concerning is, though, you have such a great performance in the first half, and then you go in the second half, and it's a complete disaster. Stafford fumbles, a bunch of 3-and-outs. You have less than 20 yards, going into the fourth quarter. It's a disastrous, performance. And what this team needs to focus on is putting together 60 minutes of football. If this team performs, I do give them a chance in most games to have games like that where it's going to be, a drive or two that's going to determine most games. That's how it is in the NFL. And you got to remember, as bad as the Lions are, and I agree with every point that you make, other teams in the NFL aren't that much better than the Lions, where they're not within 5 to 6 key plays of winning. If they make those plays, Jason, I'll implore you to have a little bit more hope. If they make those plays, they can compete in a lot of games. Are they Super Bowl contending? If you look big picture, yes, Jim Caldwell's not the guy, and I agree with you. But I would say right now, knowing that what you know, knowing that the organization's sticking with them, you just have to judge what you're seeing. And what you're seeing is that these players respect Caldwell. They will at least, hopefully, more often than not, play for him and give a decent performance, and then we can see how it shakes out. But
Except
I'm
DeAndre Levy.
I'm a little bit hopeful that in the next 2 weeks that they're going to be in the game. That's all I'm going to say. You're playing the Rams, bro. You're not playing Green Bay. You're not playing Minnesota. You're playing the Rams and the Redskins. Probably I would even just say 1-1's coming in the next 2 weeks. I would say you're probably going to beat the Rams and lose to the Skins, or lose to the Rams and beat the Redskins. I think you go 1-1 these next 2 games, and you reevaluate in a couple weeks. I think you need to look game by game and realize there was a lot to like in the performance versus the Eagles, but if you choose to focus on the negative, yeah, you're going to be pissed off. I would implore you, have a nice cocktail, sit and relax, and try to look for some positives, and there were some, but definitely globally, I agree with you. When we talk about what's the long-term goals for this Lions team, I think a new coach definitely is in order, because I think a new coach would probably have this team 3-2 or 4-1 instead of being 2-3 as we chat today.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think you could be looking at how many games have they played? 5?
5 or 2-3.
They could have been 4-1 at this point because the games have been so close, and it's been the coach who has just fucked it up. And
but are the Lions a better team without Ebron? Do you see him coming back and causing a problem when he returns?
I don't put a whole lot of stock into the problems that he causes, but I do think that it's one less thing that you have to game plan for. You don't have to worry about trying to get the ball to Ebron. It's one less person for Matthew Stafford to look to, because probably his progressions, he really should be looking at Theo Riddick as like his second progression, because that's what's working for you right now. That's your running game, to pass the ball to Theo Riddick. And when you have Ebron out there, your progression then usually goes Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Eric Ebron. None of those are open. You're either getting sacked or you have just enough time to try and find your running back. So I like the idea of what they were doing. They would put Corey Robinson in as kind of that, as basically as a sixth offensive lineman to play the role of actually Brandon Pettigrew. And I think that probably gave a little bit more protection to Matthew Stafford. But I don't think that's going to change much. I mean, my prediction for the next 2 games is 0-2. I think the Rams, I think the Eagles had a good defense, but they don't have a player like Aaron Donald on their team. I think Aaron Donald is just going to completely disrupt the Lions offensive line. And even though there is some signs of them starting to congeal and starting to come together as a cohesive unit, I think the Rams are going to be able to get in the backfield. They're going to be able to sack Matthew Stafford, and that's going to create problems. And then I think the following week against the Redskins, I think Kirk Cousins, he'll probably pick apart our defense.
You didn't get pumped at all? Like, my goodness, man. You didn't get pumped when Stafford loses his helmet, and there's that great meme out there with him getting tackled and, making that play. You don't get excited at all seeing Matthew Stafford be pumped up and seeing him play a little bit better versus a team that was highly touted in terms of not giving up touchdowns, Jim Schwartz, that whole storyline. Matthew Stafford played pretty decent. Unfortunately, that fumble kind of took
Play
the shine
for
a little
60
bit.
minutes. Play for 60 minutes, and then I'll get excited.
60 minutes. Okay, so what would you need to see going forward besides playing 60 minutes that might turn your vibe around? Because you're very negative as we chat.
I want to see less 3 and outs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with that. That's the ineptness of the offense in the second half, or whenever they have that span of time that they just continue to go 3 and out, or they have 5 plays where they have a penalty on one. So I need to see them continually move the ball. I don't care if they're not scoring touchdowns. I want to see them consistently getting into the opponent's territory and at least giving Matt Prater an opportunity to kick a field goal. That's all I want to see. I want to see them consistently scoring. I don't want them to get 0 on a possession. Get 3. That's all. I don't even care. One of the most beloved Lions is Jason Hanson for kicking field goals. Just get down there. Matt Prater has a gigantic leg. You just have to probably get to the 35-yard line and then trot out Prater. That's all you got to do. I don't think that's asking a lot. If your average start position is at the 25-yard line, all you have to do is get 40 yards of offense to get into field goal range. It's not asking a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm thinking that this week is going to be a good week again for the Lions. The Rams come in, they're playing okay, but you really think you're going to go out there and really have to worry a lot about Case Keenum? Come on now.
No, but I think Todd Gurley will get right.
You think? Yeah.
I think Todd Gurley will probably run for about 130 yards and at least a touchdown.
You're thinking loss, huh, versus the Rams?
Unless our offense can click, as I said, then no.
Real quickly out of the chute, put a poll question on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. Ebron was out versus Philly, and the Lions were victorious. Are the Lions a better team without Ebron? Early voting, 60% say, hell yeah, they're better without Eric Ebron.
Of course, because people hate Eric Ebron.
No, Jason, I'm not talking about that, whether you think he's, when you have a player,
it's
as important as Ebron, he hurt
biased.
the team. He hurt the team.
It's bias.
He hurt the team versus Chicago with penalties, with morale. A guy like that, if you make a play like that where you give up on a play and you turn your back on your teammate, in essence, symbolically, that guy hurt the team. And when he was out, I was really happy. I'm like, you know what? It's time. Whether you agree or not, I would rather him succeed somewhere else. I don't vibe with his personality. I think that, sometimes addition by subtraction is the way to go. I hope his injury lingers a little bit longer and we see the emergence of other guys. It's just time to move on from him. It's just not the right fit.
I will agree that Eric Ebron fit more of the mold of the Joe Lombardi offense. I think when Joe Lombardi came here from New Orleans, that was a integral part of their offense. They had Jimmy Graham in New Orleans, and that's what the hope was for this team, is that Eric Ebron is going to be the next Jimmy Graham, and that's clearly not what happened. And now with Jim Bob Cooter, I think Cooter runs a different style that may not need that pass catching tight end.
Right.
So I will say, in that aspect, we don't need a player like Eric Ebron. We need a guy like Brandon Pettigrew.
And then, you saw Darius Slay finally make a couple plays. You really could look at it, if you're a fan of Philly, like our guy Vinny, you could really be upset because you're driving, Ryan Matthews fumbles the ball at the worst possible time, and he really hurt the team. He really looked like, when he went back to the bench, Ryan Matthews, he looked devastated. He knew the impact of what he had done, and it's basic fundamentals, and you have to learn that. You cannot fumble the football, but Darius Slay stepped up, and I know people are really imploring him to step it up and be the guy that we paid that big money to. But hey, if he can step up his game and be big play Slay more often than not, then hey, and that's where it starts from. Turnovers. They had only one turnover on that defense going into that game versus the Eagles, and it was a Quandre Diggs, I think, INT. And now you go and Darius Slay causes 2 more turnovers, that's huge. That's where the focus has to be on that defense. Get some turnovers, and maybe, just maybe, if you can just tread water. Remember, Ziggy Ansah's out. Maybe DeAndre Levy gives you something later in the second half of the year. The key guys that are injured might come back, and you might have, if you're around 500 when they come back, maybe you can use that as a second half push.
90 seconds. 90 seconds. What did I say that I wanted to see from this team? 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see 60 minutes of defense. I don't want to see 90 seconds of defense.
Okay, Jason. I'm hoping that this team shows you that they're worthy of getting you back on the bandwagon. We'll love to have you. Now, globally, you're absolutely right, but I think for you, you need to focus this week on the positives. Focus on the positives.
I don't want to be on the bandwagon because I'm already a Lions fan.
Jump on the positivity train, man. It might help you.
No, I will not be on the positivity train.
No positivity?
I was on the positivity train all off season. I was giving the Lions every single opportunity. And I think the biggest thing is that it was just too many ifs and things needing to go perfectly right. The offensive line needing to gel, everyone staying healthy, and it's just hasn't worked out.
I implore you, change up your vibe this week. If you're a guy that sits on the couch, has your snacks ready, and watches football, mix it up this week. Maybe go to a local watering hole, a dive place, or a place that you enjoy. Mix it up. Be with the people, because I think you just need a shot of life, because you're very, very negative. And on a day and in a week where we win, can't have that.
So people in public can see me be angry and be like, what's that guy getting so worked up about?
You don't think you'd be the only one there? I think watching the Lions game in public was awesome. I was at a restaurant having a lot of wine. It was great. The waiter was awesome. Hey, Guinness and wine is what the drink of. Hey, that's what the women were drinking. That's what the women were drinking, so that's what I drank.
You were with a bunch of women.
Yeah, I was with the family. A lot of women in the family. So I was with the family, and it was, exuberant. The waiters were looking at me, and I was watching the game. I'm like, oh, it was exciting. Of course, the majority of people, Jason, are negative on the Lions. And what I'm saying is just look for the positive to kind of balance it out a little bit. Of course, I was cussing at Caldwell in the second half when Matthew Stafford fumbled that football. I wanted to take my phone and throw it against the wall. How do you just drop the football? Come on now, I'm like same old Lions. I mean, I tweeted out. If you follow us on Twitter, you knew I said, okay, what are the odds it's going to be a 3-and-out the first possession? And they didn't get 3-and-out because Philly got a penalty. But, of course, the drive stalled, and they didn't do nothing in the second half. But I implore you, I think this week is going to be a Lions victory. Go Lions! All right, take a break, brother. Come back. Now we got to dig into what the hell's going on with our hockey team, what the hell's going on with our college football team. You're listening to the Motor City Sports Rant, episode and version number 80. Thanks, everybody, for your continued support of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. We ask that if you like what you're listening to, just tell one other person, hey, there's this great Detroit Sports Podcast Network. They do daily shows dedicated to all things Detroit sports. And to support us, please just go over to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the hub of the operations where you can go check out our Twitter page. You can go check out where the podcasts are located each and every day. We're running about 6 to 7 daily podcasts, all dedicated to Detroit sports, whether it be dedicated to Michigan football, whether it's a show dedicated to Michigan State, whether it's, talking about the Lions or the Tigers. The Detroit Sports Podcast Network is here, and we're ready to go, and we love bringing you great Detroit sports content. Check us out, subscribe on iTunes, download the daily shows, and tell everybody that you know about the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for visiting our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's all it took was a little bit of nice music.
Mark Morrison. You're listening to Mark Morrison, Return to the Mat on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Oh, Motor City Sports Rant. Let's talk about a team that hasn't disappointed us just yet, the Detroit Red Wings. I can be positive about the Red Wings.
Thursday, Game 1, Tampa Bay, a team that's like our nemesis now, a new rival.
They really are, and I'm excited that it always seems that whenever we change divisions, that we have to build new rivals, and I like that it's happening. It used to be the Maple Leafs, and then it was the Blackhawks, and we had the Avalanche for that period of time. And now with being in the East, you have the rivalry with Tampa Bay. Being broomed out of the playoffs 2 years in a row, I think it's good for the team.
And Jason, obviously, the talk going into the season is how this roster is going to shake out. People don't seem to be really on board anymore with Ken Holland. It's a lot more skeptical. It's a lot more critical of the moves. And I think the reason is most people understand the direction they're going, but it seems like the vision of the Red Wings is to halfway mix youth and veterans. And right now, I believe the will of what the fans want, and I think what I want is, listen, we know you're going towards a youth movement. It's obvious. Yes, you're transitioning now from the Zetterberg-Datsuk era. You're going into an era now where you're going to need guys like Mantha, Athanasiou, maybe Polkinen, Tatar, Nyquist. You're going to need these young guys alongside some middle-aged guys like Helm and Abdelkader, and you're going to try to transition into a new era. But what we see now a team where you start waiving young guys and you're making these roster additions and subtractions that I don't think a lot of people are really down with. You lose, Furk to Carolina. You waive Polkinen. And once the news broke about some of these moves, people are like, listen, why is it that you're automatically guaranteeing a spot for an older veteran like Steve Ott, who's probably not going to be in there game in, game out? Franz Nielsen, a guy that's in his 30s that you're looking to put the puck in the net. We're saying as fans, and I'm wondering what you think, is that why is it that they just don't go all the way with the youth movement and see what you got? Because I think we talked about it. It looks like only one of Mantha or Athanasiou is going to be on this roster, when I think just keep them both and see what they can do. I think the fans would be happier if they just went all in, sacrificed 1 or 2 years if you need to, not be in the postseason, and just see what you got with these guys and go fully with the youth movement, infuse some energy, and see what this Red Wing team can do with the crop of young guys.
No, I think that's the reason why the fans don't run the team, is that this team can viably make the playoffs. We have talent on our team. We made the playoffs last year, and I think it's still viable that we can make the playoffs. And even if we make it, and hockey, more than any sport really, all you have to do is get in, and if you have a hot goaltender, that's all it takes to make a run in the playoffs. So you talk about waiving getting rid of some of the young guys. The Martin Furk, that guy, I feel like I've seen that guy for a while. That guy is probably a perennial AHL player. He probably would have never made the team. And then Polkinen, I have a little bit more apprehension about, but also this is a guy who's had opportunities, but he just hasn't made that transition. And we have enough players on our team and enough young guys that we can't keep giving opportunities to the same players. We need to see what we have in other players. And I think Polkinen is probably, even though he's a little bit older, and that's why people probably see him more as NHL ready. I think the younger guys that we have, those are the guys that we would rather see. So I'm okay with waiving Polkinen because there's still a chance he clears waivers and he goes back to Grand Rapids. So then you move on to the young kids that we have. Nyquist, Tatar, they're already with the team. Dylan Larkin, obviously, he's going to be a gigantic part of this team for years to come. My biggest issue comes when you're talking about Mantha and Athanasiou. Those are two guys who I think are clearly ready for this team, but you're only going to give one a shot. It really doesn't. I think that's where you're going to see one of those guys, Steve Ott, probably get either waived or sent down to the minors, because you're going to see those guys early and often probably. And I think until that happens, I think it's just going to be a work in progress, this team this year.
Okay, see, the good thing is that other NHL players started to weigh in on the Polkinen, because I think a lot of fans in Detroit were really upset. Patrick O'Sullivan, a former NHL player and a guy that's really active on Twitter, he tweeted out, Polkinen can't skate well enough at the NHL level to use his shot. AHL goals don't mean as much. Trust me on that one. And he's had his opportunities. Yeah, Patrick O'Sullivan gave the truth, and a lot of fans were like, well, he's got a big shot, and he was a guy that put the puck in the net.
How many times? It wasn't enough.
It was not enough. No, and then now in training camp, he's coming off of a shoulder injury, and he needs more playing time, so I'm hoping that nobody claims him and that he gets a chance to develop. But the question that you ask is, why is it that Mantha, Athanasiou, why is it that the perception is that the Red Wings at this point in time keep their guys in the minors way too long? And two things. Are you confident that the guys and the youth movement that the Wings are counting on are guys that can produce? Because obviously Dylan Larkin is a budding superstar, but everybody else, they kind of haven't taken the next step. And when you look at who Kenny Holland is giving contracts to, Abdelkader, Helm, Drew Miller, it seems like more of the same. Whereas people also say, listen, if you're going to make changes, this looks like a lot of the same guys that didn't have success and moved these guys out of the first round. If you're looking to win the Stanley Cup, I'm not sure this group of talent collectively is going to get it done. And so with that, I'm thinking, you know what? Even if the best laid plans is for this team to get into the postseason, just judging by what I see around what the Red Wings have done, I think other teams have gotten better. It might be, if the Wings don't put the puck in the net and play better on special teams, they might miss the playoffs by a lot, by like at least 10 to 20 points.
I think just like the Lions, just like the Tigers.
You need 95 points.
Just like the rest of the Detroit teams. The talent is there. Gus Nyquist, Thomas Tatar, Dylan Larkin, all those guys have the potential to be great players. We've seen Nyquist be a goal scorer. We've seen Tatar be a goal scorer. We know, or we at least think, that Mantha and Athanasiou are upcoming talent. And if all those do pan out, then we have the potential of having a great team. And you look at teams like Chicago that they've built through the draft, and their young guys have clearly hit. And you see what they've done. They've won multiple Stanley Cups. So it's now time for us to start moving in that direction and to seeing if they can develop, giving them the shot. And I think obviously having Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, guys like Marian Hossa, that definitely helps develop young players. But I think we need one more superstar to put on this team to really guide these young players. Because as much as Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg and Nick Kronwall can help these young guys, there's nobody that's really putting the puck in the net like 50 times a season. We don't have a 50 goal scorer. So I think that's something that we need. And I'm not sure if that's obvious. We missed the boat on Stamkos. I think Stamkos would have, if we had Stamkos on this team right now, do you think we'd actually be in consideration for a Stanley Cup?
Well, it definitely helps, because what's been the biggest issue? Scoring. We need guys to put the puck in the net consistently, and I think you need to upgrade it across the board on defense.
I think Stamkos, if you put Stamkos on this team right now, you're automatically looking to that guy. And I think guys like Nyquist and Tatar, they've seen from Datsyuk and Zetterberg. Datsyuk and Zetterberg, while they can score goals, they're looking to set up everybody else. And that's what they've learned. So if we had somebody who can actually put the puck in the net, then I think that would have changed the whole spectrum of things. Now we're looking at probably, at best, another rebuilding season. Maybe making the playoffs, but probably not going further.
But when you look at the top line that is likely to be featured by the Wings, it looks like it's going to be Franz Nielsen playing with forwards, Henrik Zetterberg, and Thomas Tatar. What do you think?
It doesn't scare me at all.
Really? You don't think that can be a lineup?
I think
a line that could do some things?
That's a very, very good two-way line. That's a line that you can put up against another first line, and it'll probably cancel each other out most nights.
Okay, so you're not seeing that as a superstar line that can do some things, make a name for themselves?
Unless, I'm just not sure. Unless Franz Nielsen is going to put the puck in the net 30, 40 times. I do see it as a very good line. I just don't see that as your goal-scoring line. So, I see the lines that has Larkin and Nyquist and Athanasiou. Those are the lines that are going to do damage.
So do you think that Mantha has the edge over Athanasiou? I think Athanasiou has done more up until this point, but Mantha has the higher upside. So who do you think, if it's of those two, if it's just one, who's the guy that's going to be in the lineup day in, day out?
It sucks because I really want to see both of these guys, and I think Mantha had we had our hopes and dreams on him when we drafted him as being our big offensive juggernaut. But I think Anthony Ciu has done more, and I'd probably go with him. You saw another full season in Grand Rapids for Mantha, and he has improved. I guess if he is going to stay, hopefully he doesn't stay there very long, and he actually comes up with the team, gets to develop with the Red Wings. But if you give him another season, and he better be up next season.
Okay, so how much influence do you think this 25-year playoff streak has over this organization? Do you think this team is building to just get into the postseason, or do you think the way that Kenny Holland has spoken, the way that the roster's shaking out, the additions, the subtractions, that you feel like this team is on the verge climbing the ladder to get to the Stanley Cup?
I think people around the organization, it may affect this whole streak, but I think when it comes to the team and the coach, I don't think that's on their minds. I think what's on their minds is the next game, and they're just looking to compete at a high level. Guys like Henrik Zetterberg and even Justin Abdelkader, who's a veteran now, and Nick Cronwall. They want to win. They want to get to the playoffs. They want to win a Stanley Cup. And I know probably somewhere in their mind, it's keeping the streak alive. But I'm not going to say that they don't want to win a Stanley Cup.
I didn't say they don't want to. I just don't see. I feel like the team is built to get to the postseason, because that doesn't look like a playoff team to me. I mean, when you get to 2 years in a row versus Tampa Bay, what was the difference in those series? Tampa Bay could score. They could put the puck in the net in any situation. Power play, special teams, 5-on-5, they could put the puck in the net. They had superstars. And so in 2 years, you saw, okay, they out-physicaled you. They outperformed you. You weren't able to, advance out of the first round. And now people are wondering and speculating, just maybe, how do we get Steve Yzerman to run this organization? When you look at Tampa Bay, they're massive. They're massive. They're fast. They can put the puck in the net.
They have got a young goalie who's actually really good.
A solid goaltender.
Peter Mrazek is a good goalie, but he's not Ben Bishop yet.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And so you're going to need them to take the next step. And so, again, I feel like this is the ceiling for this team is to maybe win one playoff round. That
could be the wild card, though, this season. If Peter Mrazek becomes one of the best goalies in the league, that would completely change this team, because then you're looking at winning games 1-0, 2-1. If we can get into situations like that, then this team could be looking at a run.
Okay, now,
but is that going to happen?
A team that is not anywhere near a run is our Michigan State Spartans, Jason. My goodness. We'll finish the podcast talking about some bad news, but unfortunately for us, I mean, our investment now is pretty much zero. I mean, the season's over. You look to see if Terry's going to be the guy that's going to be there for the remainder of this year, going into next year. But what's gone on and what people are looking at is, and it's a very good point, is that last year you're in the playoff. You won with your defense in spite of an offense that had a pro quarterback in Connor Cook, but the offense really underwhelmed a lot of the season last year. So you go into the playoff, you get rolled by your opponent, Alabama, a national team. You don't score any points. And so you would think that coming back this year, Mark Dantonio and the staff would say, okay, we have to make an adjustment on this offense. So what did they do? They said, no, we're going to run the same exact system. And now you're seeing a big, huge fall off when you don't have Connor Cook back there, when you lose a lot of offensive linemen. And so my expectation was that there was going to be a system in place with Mark Dantonio. Unfortunately, there needs to be a minor adjustment with that offense. And
minor adjustment?
They need to air it out. They need to. They definitely. Yes. I mean, I would say the grand scheme of things, they're way too conservative.
Yes,
and
they need to get rid of that offensive coordinator.
It's bad.
There's no way that he should have a job.
It's unbelievable how that first drive that Michigan State had versus BYU was very effective. You passed the ball, and then the rest of the first half, nothing. You just stalled out. And you let BYU back into the game, and it was a nightmare. It was unbelievable that Mark Dantonio and that staff, Dave Warner, the defensive staff, the team has regressed in several areas, and it's shocking to see. when you see a team like BYU that was ranked very low in terms of pass defense, and you don't know to pass the hell out of the football. And I think they did something that's really not kosher with a lot of players these days. I think they hung Tyler O'Connor out to dry. It wasn't his fault. Yeah, the offense stalled a little bit, but that's because the play calling was absolutely atrocious. That wasn't Tyler O'Connor's fault. He was pretty much okay throwing touchdown passes. Yeah, I know that Dantonio didn't like him taking the sacks, but that performance that the Spartans had was really tough because I think they quit.
You know, what I'd like to know is that how much leeway did Connor Cook get when he played? Was he able to change calls and call his own plays, basically take the team on his shoulders and pass the ball when he saw fit? Because if that's, I can see that being Connor Cook and something that he done. And I'm not sure if Tyler O'Connor can do that. I mean, he's been in the program for 5 years, but I think that may be a hindrance, is that he's been in it for 5 years. So he knows what to call. So he knows what to run, and he runs exactly what Dave Warner calls.
It's shocking.
And that's a problem.
It's shocking that after Notre Dame, that second half, that the offenses just went and petered out. It's unbelievable that they didn't pass more versus BYU. It's shocking.
The pass sets up the run. I think that's something that that they must have forgotten, is that they have been successful running the ball, but that's also because we've had guys like Connor Cook who can thread the needle on 50-50 balls, and Tyler O'Connor just throwing balls 10 feet above guys. It doesn't really work. You need to set up the pass before you get to the run.
And people asked in East Lansing, they said, hey, are you going to take over the play calling, Dantonio? Who's like, no, I'm not doing that at all. Dave Warner's the guy. He's going to be making the calls, and they need to make an adjustment. And then you go and you say, okay, now you juxtapose that with what Michigan's doing. Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, that brings me to my next point, and I kind of feel dirty talking about it, is Mark Dantonio is loyal to a fault. That like you said, he probably left Tyler O'Connor in there too long. They're not play calling the right stuff for him. He's not getting rid of Dave Warner, not changing up the play calls. And Mark Dantonio has done great stuff. He has brought the Spartans success. We've gotten to the Rose Bowl. We won a Rose Bowl. We've won Big Ten championships. We got to the college football playoff. And part of me, though, as a Michigan State fan, it almost doesn't seem real. Am I right? It doesn't feel like we're like a championship team.
Not this year, obviously.
Not this year. In years before, has it ever felt like we're a championship team?
It did last year.
Really?
Yeah, it felt like if they were to play well on defense, that they had some key playmakers and a solid running game, that if they performed, I feel like they got on the big stage and crapped the bed. If they played that game again in a different situation, probably they probably might not win, but they were in a much better spot to perform at a higher level. That's for sure.
I mean, for me, I hope that they were gonna at least compete with Alabama, but there's been this nagging thing in the back of my head that it seemed magical that we're being talked about as
in the class of Alabama
team, being a championship team, and then you see what's happening in Ann Arbor, and I hate to admit it, but Jim Harbaugh is a very good coach, and what he's done in 2 years is very impressive. And what they did last Saturday against Rutgers, beating them 78-0, that is what championship teams do.
Yeah, but Jason,
Michigan State.
It's not about Michigan. It's about Rutgers is awful, horrid.
If Michigan State went out and played Rutgers, the final score would probably be
10-3,
35-14.
Michigan State's favor. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You'd probably win that game, but you wouldn't blow out. Championship teams blow out teams who are awful. Alabama would go out and win 50-0 over a team. Teams like Florida State would just dominate teams. You saw I'm not calling Louisville. Louisville's not a championship team. When Oregon was a championship team, they would be blowing out guys.
Jason, am I hearing you say that maybe you're thinking that Mark Dantonio might not be the correct captain of this ship anymore? After one really pretty much on the verge of a terrible season? One season like that?
I'm not saying that he's a bad coach. What I think he is really our Bo Schembechler. He can really do no wrong, and he can stay here as long as he wants. He will be our legendary coach, the guy that we look at as they're probably going to build a statue at some point if he stays here long enough. But I'm just not sure. I mean, it may take another 5 years, but I'm just not sure if he can get us to a national championship.
Yeah, now if your goal is to win it all, yeah, it's super, super tough. I think that for Michigan State, getting into the college football playoff consistently is a really, really unbelievable goal to set. Because you got to remember, there are such strong recruiting bases in the South and the SEC. You just got to compete with Michigan, Ohio State. It's going to be super hard, man.
A guy
it's
like
tough.
Jim Harbaugh, though, he's able to come in.
What has he done yet? He hasn't done it yet.
I get it, but he's played. His team is playing like a championship team right now.
They're playing very well.
They're doing everything. Even when last year, when you said that we felt like a championship team, we weren't blowing teams out. We were making it close. We had close games.
But you built it on defense and a solid running game. And so,
isn't that exactly what Michigan's doing right now? They may not have the running game yet, but they have a elite defense.
Elite defense.
Defense is shutting out teams. They are playing bad teams. They played Wisconsin really close.
You see, though, Jason, the gap between where they are now and ultimate success is not that much, in that you see what happens when you dip in terms of level of quarterback play. You see when you have a defense that now, remember, they didn't play a half with Malik McDowell. They lost some key pieces too to graduation, and so that's why.
Yeah, totally. We got burned.
So
we lost an entire offense.
When you say
defense.
transitional year, it happens. Remember that Alabama is a perennial powerhouse. Ohio State's a perennial powerhouse. Outside of 2-3 college teams in the entire nation, it ebbs and flows. And so what Michigan State has to do is, in order to have success and to get back there, is find a solid quarterback and improve the system. They have to kind of go with, I think they will with the young talent that they have at wide receiver, the new recruits that will come in next year. They will do that, but you have to have a quarterback to execute that. And so what you see is with Michigan State is a stubbornness that's so bad that in game you see that, in your first couple of drives, you're going to have success passing the ball and you go away from it. And so I think with maybe if the pressure gets hot and they change the offensive coordinator, if the season bottoms out and you see that the heat around East Lansing in that program heats up on Mark Dantonio, he'll be forced to change. You got to remember that the trend has gone pretty much steadily up, 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 up. Now the stock is down this year. I fully expect that next year it'll be much better. And you got to remember, Jason, Michigan set up an easy schedule.
I get it.
And I still have hope that on October 29th, everyone's like, oh, I'll take, I would bet Michigan to blow out State by 30, 35 points. You got to remember, it's in East Lansing. The defense potentially could get healthier in the next couple weeks. Remember that this year is also being affected by injuries that happened this year. Riley Bull is a key member of that team, a captain. When he's not there, you see what happens. They're not tackling well on the defensive side at all, on any level. So I do believe, though, the Michigan State game is not going to be a runaway. I'm not saying Michigan State's going to win it. I have confidence Michigan State's going to play their best game. And if they play their best game, if they win the battle in the trenches, remember, the key stat that everyone looks at when State plays Michigan is who wins the running matchup. The team that usually wins in terms of who rushes more, usually at a big percentage clip, wins that game. And Michigan State will come and play well. I don't see them getting rolled. If Michigan completely comes to East Lansing and rolls Michigan State, I will think much more along the lines of what you're saying. And but I don't think it's going to happen. I still think Michigan State's going to win that game.
And it's going to be a toss-up. Anything can happen in rivalry games.
But man, you see how bad the fans are? Burning tickets. A lot of State fans are selling their tickets to Michigan fans.
And that's awful.
It's awful. I think, relax, guys. It's 1 year. Look at Michigan. They had 7 years to rebuild. We're talking about 1 year. I'm not that angry. I'm upset that I think Michigan State was going to be a 2 or 3 loss team anyway. But to lose to the likes of BYU, to lose to the likes of teams that you're losing to, is unacceptable.
So let's say, okay, scenario. Our offense doesn't really change the rest of the season. And then into next season, you see the same old stuff that the offense is still going. How long does Mark Dantonio last?
That's a great question. I think you build a lot of credibility. I think you get at least 3 bad years. You'd have to go along the lines of this year, next year, and the year after, middle of the 2018 season.
Well, I pray to God.
Dude, Rose Bowl, college football playoff, that builds you time.
I understand. I completely understand. I just pray to God that we don't go through another, because I'm already counting this season as a lost season.
It's a lost season.
We have to go through another 2 lost seasons. I don't want to go through what Michigan did.
No, you don't have. You're going to have to. Unfortunately, you're going to have to. And remember, now you're going to compete with another team in terms of Michigan, Ohio State to get the talent. He's got to go out there and win some battles. You know, Mark, you might have to spend the night at some dude's houses. I don't know what you got to do. You got to bring in some better players. You got to bring in some offensive linemen, and you have to probably. You might look at probably his biggest mistake this year was the quarterback he chose. You might have just knowing that's a transition year, just roll out Lewerke and see what he does, or play Terry. And maybe your choice, that the biggest mistake you made this year.
I want Messiah DeWeaver, that freshman. I want the true freshman to go out there.
Exactly. You're probably the biggest mistake, obviously now in hindsight, is probably starting Tyler O'Connor. It's the wrong choice.
Yeah, he just didn't have what it took.
Sorry, bro.
Oh, well.
Hit the
lost
bench.
Seasons for Michigan State. Lost seasons for
College
the
basketball is
Lions.
right around the corner.
College basketball, NHL, NBA are in the preseason.
Ooh, great stuff, sir.
Pistons are 0-2. But they need to defend the pick and roll a lot better.
And Reggie Jackson, of course, has a bad
6 to 8
major.
weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. Whatever, sir. It was a great podcast, bro. Good stuff.
Yeah. Hopefully next week we can actually be positive. But more than likely, whether the Lions win or lose, I guess I'll be a little bit more positive if the Lions win next week. But we'll just have to wait and see for that. For John Macaroon, I am Jason Jarvie. Later. You're a dick.
Okay, nice, idiot. You. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.